so many ministries here in upstate New York.
Yeah. Now, one of the ministries that I know that has been central to the United Methodist in the last 50 years, or maybe even longer, has been the issue of race relations and trying to do justice within the church, and also, in both within and without the church.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what the Methodist Church has been doing? Maybe even your own personal story as it relates to that.
Right. Let me just say, one of the things that has always excited me about our denomination is that our commitment to being inclusive. That is one of our values. And you see that being lived out in congregation after congregation, in group setting after group setting. And so we try to model that in a variety of ways. We're not only committed to it verbally, but our book of discipline, which is I like to call it the book of covenant.
Right.
It is the book that helps to guide how United Methodists live their lives out together in holy conferencing. And so in that book of discipline, we have stated our position on being an inclusive church. And so our churches do welcome all, and we are, as it relates to racial inclusiveness, we have been articulating that ever since. If you look at the schism that took place in the Methodist Church, it was around the issue of slavery, which was, sadly to say, during the time of the Civil War, during that particular period, all of that was happening at the same time. And so we have been definitely committed to breaking down barriers, breaking down walls, making sure that everyone is at the table. And that's not always easy. But
Right.
we do our best, and we try to teach that as a part of our ministry. I'm proud to say, as bishop of this area, that we do have a cabinet that is inclusive. We have a variety of expressions around that table, persons from other ethnic groups as well as gender inclusive. And so we model that at the cabinets table, and we really try to work hard with our local congregations. I would say to you, though, that our greatest challenge and our greatest struggle, though, does remain with the local churches, trying to see that our congregations reflect the mosaic picture that we know God would want us to be. And so that remains our greatest challenge as we try to have vital congregations.
Now, I know today is a very special day for you. This is February 8th when we're taping this.
Yes.
Did you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes. Let me just say, up until about 4 years ago, I never shared this story because I didn't realize how much pain was still with me. In 1968, February 8th, 1968, I was a part of what is now known as the Orangeburg Massacre. I was a student at South Carolina State College, and after several weeks of demonstrations, we were actually demonstrating trying to get access to a local bowling alley, which was about 2 blocks from the college campus. On that night, about 200 students, it was mostly male, because we, the night before, had received some word that there would probably be some violence, that the people in the community were going to do some things, and so we encouraged the females not to come. But as we were exiting the campus to go to the bowling alley, the South Carolina State Patrol were at the foot of the campus. To our total shock. As we were approaching the end of the campus, they began to fire bullets. At first, we thought that they were shooting something into the trees because it sounded like rain or something. And then we discovered they were actually shooting at us, and we fell to the ground. I was one of the fortunate ones. I was blessed. I was not hurt, but 3 students were killed. One of them was very close to me. He actually lived about 30 miles from where I did in that state. That was a major turning point for me in my life. It was a point in which I prayed to God mightily. I remember during those moments on the ground, I kept remembering and I kept praying the Lord's Prayer. And after that, I made a commitment that I would make sure that my life was not simply spent on graduating from college, getting a good job, taking care of myself, but that I would find some way to be involved in a ministry that would help other people. And at that time, little did I know that it would lead to ordained ministry. But I knew God was pointing me in a new direction. And so, although I had already been accepted for graduate school in Atlanta, I knew that just didn't fit anymore. And so from then on, I think God began to point me in the direction of ministry. It was another time in which God nudged me in this direction.
Yeah, it's so amazing to me when you think through church history how incidences like that have solidified, in people's lives and given them a story. Thank you for sharing that. I know that it must be still painful for you to think about those days.
Yeah, and let me just say one other thing. In terms of where was the church during that period, I'm very, very proud to say, and the history books have recorded, it's fact, that the United Methodist Church in the South Carolina Conference during that particular period, it was the bishop and pastors and laypersons who rallied to our call, who spoke out against the injustices that were taking place. And so that again reinforced in my mind that the United Methodist Church was playing a very vital role in speaking out against injustices. In our denomination, as you probably know, we have roughly 11 million members as a denomination, and we're growing. We're actually growing because of not the U.S., but we're growing because of Africa and the Philippines. Those areas are growing more so than in the U.S. However, in the U.S., as you know, the percentage of people of color is a small percentage. But what I have discovered in the midst of all of that, though, is there is still a commitment for being an inclusive church, for opening the doors, and for welcoming people in of different ethnic groups. And so that makes me proud to be a United Methodist, and also makes me proud to be a bishop in the church.
Well, I would imagine so. I mean, and how has we always talk about Black, African American people in leadership, and you're having to relate to people of other white people or Caucasian, or you just go down through the whole list.
Yes.
How has that been for you as a bishop?
Yeah, let me just say, as you know, I grew up in Florence, South Carolina, during a period of segregation. Right. And so in that particular period, for my first, I would say, 18 years, all I witnessed was separations. However, even during that period, there were moments in which the races did cross over. In that town, my local church was actually 100% African American. There was another United Methodist Church a couple of blocks away that was just the opposite. majority, and but yet, for some reason, even during those difficult days, the pastors I remembered would do things together. We would do certain things as a church. We didn't necessarily worship together on Sundays, but we found common ground or common things that we had in common together, and we would work on those together as
Right.
churches. So I never forgotten that. Let me just say, I went to Wesley Theological Seminary, which is predominantly Anglo, as you know. And so all of my academic study, my doctorate was in New York City at New York Theological Seminary. So most of my education was in institutions that were predominantly Anglo. And most of the people who I have related to beyond, I would say, high school, have been in arenas that have been predominantly Anglo. So I have been living in that arena, I would say, the majority of my life, certainly the majority of my life. And so I think that's one of the realities of being black in America. Although you may be a person of that racial identity, but you actually are always in a majority world, and in the U.S. at least. And so I don't see any difficulty for, say, like pastoring. I have pastored a predominantly white church, and that church grew by, there was 272 members. We actually grew in a 4-year period.
Wow.
That was one of the churches I pastored in Baltimore County. And so I've had those experiences. They've not always been all good.
Right, right.
But I thank God most of the time they have been blessings to me.
Well, Bishop Matthews, Dr. Matthews, Reverend Matthews, it's been a pleasure to have you on Encounters today, and I'm sure our viewership has been impressed with the commitment that you have for your church and for the world. You're a good United Methodist.
Thank you. And if I could say one quick thing in closing is, it's good to be here also because we are committed as a denomination to be ecumenical and to work with groups like yours. And so this is a blessing for us as well. And we thank you for this invitation again.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being a part of what we've been doing, and we look forward to a good day of Good Lord's Day.
Okay.